the history with Callahan, with the wide receivers and the way that the way that they target these guys, it's a volume situation. In 2022, again, the last full year with Burrow, where you had mostly a healthy Chase, Higgins, and Boyd. Higgins and Boyd played 16 games. Jamar played 12. Even so, Jamar out-targeted the other two pretty significantly, 127 looks. T. Higgins had 104. Tyler Boyd had 80. Where do we expect the Titans three guys in Ridley and Hopkins and Boyd to come in? Boyd's going to be the three. Like, I think it's a pretty one-to-one situation. I think in this offense, Tyler Boyd is going to get 60 to 80 targets this year and be that solid third option. It may be less than he did with the Bengals just because he's getting older. You know, they may not be as successful as the Bengals passing game was those years that they were really humming. And I think there are objectively more talented mouths to feed on this offense in terms of the running backs that you can pass to, the tight ends that you can pass to. And then the receivers beyond Boyd. Treylon Burks has the potential to carve out a 400-yard role for himself this year and eat up some of those targets, eat up some of those snaps. So we can't discount that. But that being said, with Ridley and Hopkins, I feel like we've kind of, as a media, danced around this idea, or people just have wildly conflicting ideas, but nobody cares to actually argue it out. Who's going to be the one here? DeAndre Hopkins, you go back through his career, the last time he was not the number one option on whatever offense he was playing in was his rookie year in 2013. He had 802 yards, but then every year after that, he has had 1,000 yards or was on pace to have 1,000 yards. Outside of 2016, where he had 954, so just short of 1,000 yards. Like, he's been the guy everywhere he's gone. With Ridley, that's not been the case. And you look back to those 2 years where he overlapped with Julio Jones while he was still in Atlanta. 3 years technically, but 2 years of healthy Jones. And in those 2 years, he still put up 800 yards. That was a pass-heavy offense. Matt Ryan slinging the ball around the field. Don't get me wrong. So, you know, that could be where he falls even as a 2 or a 1B if Hopkins is still the guy. You could see, 2020 Titans, AJ Brown, Corey Davis, both going for 1,000 or just shy of 1,000 yards. It could be a two 1,000-yard receiver situation for the Titans in 2024 with Ridley and Hopkins. But if you had to stake your claim today, JT, on this guy, he's getting the Jamar Chase share of targets. He's going to get 20, 30% more targets than the other guy. Is it Hopkins or is it Ridley?
You kind of already laid out my argument to say that it is DeAndre Hopkins, I think.
Okay.
And for me, it's pretty clear for DeAndre Hopkins. Like you said, he really hasn't been the not a number one receiver on his team since 2013. I think, that there's enough sample size there to feel pretty good about that claim, first of all. Second of all, I think that the chemistry really matters. Outside of Tyler Boyd and Calvin Ridley, like, they need to continue to build chemistry with Will Levis. Will Levis was already just absolutely just throwing. He was trying to fit the football into a DeAndre Hopkins sized hole every single play. Like, that's what he
didn't have much other options, to be fair, but he was doing that. Yes.
But I don't see any reason for that not to continue to happen, right? He has this guy in his room that even when it's been, rough and bad with a pretty, lackluster group.
Rough and bad. It has been, yeah.
He had Hopkins then, right? He had him. I don't see why that trust would go away now that you put a Calvin Ridley and a Tyler Boyd. Not to say that they're going to get their own, but I think based on, the history of DeAndre Hopkins and the connection that he already has, I think it's pretty safe for me to say that I still think DeAndre Hopkins will be the one in this offense.
Yeah, the counter argument there is that, hey, the last 2 full seasons that Calvin Ridley was the one in the offense, which was the last 2 full seasons he played in 2020 and then in 2023. He had 1,300 yards and 1,000 yards in those 2 seasons. He had, roughly 140 targets in those 2 seasons. He's younger than, he's 2 years, 3 years younger than DeAndre Hopkins.
5 years younger on paper.
Right. So almost a decade younger on paper, frankly. He may, it's going to be a style situation, because if they're using Ridley as the outside guy, vertical threat, he's our big X that we're going to use downfield pretty exclusively and not really bump him inside much, not use him as an using it as a crossers guy, then yeah, maybe he is the 2. But if they're going to rotate these guys a lot, and we're going to get an idea of this when we, get to go to more practices tomorrow and then next week, and then in the July, August training camp periods of how they're rotating guys in terms of alignment. If he's moving inside and out as much as DeAndre is, if they're using him all over the field and not just as a prototypical X, I think you could see a season where he is the one, he puts up 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 yards. And, DeAndre Hopkins comes in right at or around 1,000 yards. And so, again, it's still a 1A, 1B situation, but Ridley is the guy. Now, you bring up the chemistry, and I think that's the biggest thing for me here with DeAndre Hopkins having that built-in chemistry already with Will Levis. As Tyler Boyd said in his media availability last week, it takes a while for, you to get on that same wavelength mentally, a quarterback and a receiver. Hopkins and Levis are already there. And so especially early in September, October, when they are trying to get this train on the tracks, trying to get rolling towards the station, and they're trying to figure out a lot of new things, a lot of moving parts on the offensive line, a lot of moving parts with a new offensive scheme, and these weapons being sifted in and out and trying to feed the mouths evenly. And there's going to be a lot of troubleshooting. DeAndre Hopkins might just be the constant for Will Levis in that first month or two of maybe not turmoil, but a lot of cogs in motion, where I just, when in doubt, I'm going to my boy. I'm going to my guy. He had me last year. He'll have me again this year. And so he may come roaring out to a significant lead early and kind of pad his stats for the season in that way. So I'm with you that I lean Hopkins as the one. But here's my ultimate point. Barring one missing significantly more time than the other due to injury or something, I don't see these guys being more than 200 or 300 yards off from one another. I don't see a world in which Calvin Ridley has 1,400 yards and DeAndre Hopkins has 600. That's going to be because DeAndre missed half the season, God forbid, with an injury. If they both play, I think it's going to be the idea is 1,000 to 1,000. That's kind of what we're aiming for.
Yeah, I think so too. Obviously it's May 28th, but if you ask me to give a ballpark number, I say one of them probably sits around 1,100 and the other one probably sits around 850 to 950 is probably where I think we're going to eventually get, which is still really good to have that. And then also Tyler Boyd and everything else as well. There's so many options. Honestly, we could see anybody out of this offense explode and have a surprising season, but Hopkins and Ridley, I think, are going to be the two that really, run up the stat sheet. I
agree. Okay, so those are our expectations. I think that we didn't put hard numbers on anybody besides Levis because that, what's really, if we wanted to do that, we could do that, but who really cares? I think that those are reasonable expectations of these guys. And again, I think a lot of the offensive production this year is kind of agnostic of the success this team has. If you told me, Easton, I need you to come up with a hard prediction on numbers for if the Titans go 6-11 or if the Titans go 10-6 or 10-7. I don't think it's all that different. Obviously, the offense will be more productive. You'll have, it'll be more successful. So you'll have more yards, you'll have more touchdowns, those things. But in terms of total yards of offense, I think that even if they are bad, and it's truly a hard transition year and they're figuring it out and they have some rough stretches to begin. I still think that they're going to be productive offensively because we've seen from Callahan's offenses of the past, the production is kind of agnostic of the success of the team. This offense chugs along and, you may score a lot of points on the team. You may stop them in the red zone. You may create more turnovers. But at the end of the day, they're still going to get their yards. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thanks for that.
Want more of the latest from the Hot Read podcast? Subscribe to the channel right below.
And follow us on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram @HotReadPod for even more segments, clips, and announcements.